Okay, I think I'm live. I'm gonna do a little test here, make sure everything's golden. If you're watching the replay, maybe fast forward a minute. um, make sure all is well, waiting for the thumbs up. I'm Amanda Neely. Welcome to Grandma's Wealth Wisdom and Managing Money During Crisis for the month of August 2020. I'm still waiting for the thumbs up that I'm live and the sound is coming through. As I'm doing that, I want to say a big special thank you and happy birthday to Mr. Brandon Neely, my other half. My better half, and I'm his better half. We complement each other really well. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit more about him later today, but if you haven't yet and you want to wish him a happy birthday, you got like 4 hours left in April on April 5th to do that as of when this is live, or you could always wish him a happy belated birthday. He is older than me, so I get to say he's an old man and wish him a happy birthday in that regard. Now, one of the things I really admire about Brandon is related to what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to put the topic here at the bottom of the screen. What could I ask for during this time? When we're in the time of crisis, there's plenty we could ask for. And I'm going to talk about some of those things today that you might think about calling or emailing or chatting and asking for during this time. I've got a whole bunch of ideas. I'm going to hope that I get through them in the next 29 minutes. And if not, they'll just pop up throughout the rest of April as we're talking about things. But first, I want to talk about the power of questions. Questions are really, really powerful. And part of why I believe this is because of Brandon. And again, I'll put that up here. Happy birthday, Brandon. But I was thinking about this today that he is really good at asking for things. When we started dating, right? He asked me to do stuff with him, right? To chill, to have dinner, to do different things, and that's part of why we got together. Whenever a guy since then has asked for dating advice, like should I do this for this girl or do that, or if a girl asks, should I do this with this guy or this gal or whatever it is, I always say go ask Brandon because he's really good at asking for what he wants and doing it in a way that wants you to say yes. That makes him a great husband, right? He was a great person to date back in the day. He's also gotten a lot of things for free. In fact, one year, I think it was like the first couple years of our marriage, back when iPods were like a thing, he got 2 free iPods within like a couple months of each other because he just would say, hey, I'd really like an iPod. And people would say, well, I've got this free, I've got this extra iPod someone gave me or something like that. And he's like, can I have it? Without any like shame or anything. He would just ask for it. And that has happened all the time. We get so much furniture that people were going to just discard that he was able to get and we would use in our home, all kinds of things. He's really good at asking, but not just to like get things, right? We have kind of, as we think about our business, our personal life, we're always asking questions. And we've really experienced the value of asking questions like what if, followed by some outlandish thing. Or let's think outside of the box for a second. What would the out of the box idea be? Like what would be out there in left field? And then we can like rein it in after we like say what could be, right? Or thinking like, what is most important to me? What are my goals and dreams? What should I do with blah, 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 like X resources that you get, like money from the government unexpectedly, like we're all expecting, and go back to, I think it was day one when we talked about that, April 1st. We talked about this money coming from the government, what to do with it. Like we asked a really powerful question that day. What should I do with this money? Um, and you'll notice that I try to make each day's theme of this April series of managing money during crisis a question. Because I really believe that the power of the answer directly stems from the power of the question that you ask. And so I'm going to put the question of the day up again. What could I ask during this time? We're talking about all kinds of really great questions. Before I get there, I actually have to tell you this story that I heard in a podcast today. I go grocery shopping on Sunday mornings, almost every Sunday. And today I was grocery shopping and listening to a podcast. And the episode was from the podcast for The One Thing, which is a book by Gary Keller. And it's this whole business. They got a podcast, all these things. And they were interviewing this guy. I don't remember this guy's name, and I don't have my phone on me to look him up. But the book that he wrote is called The Road Less Stupid. So if you want to find out who this guy is, just look up The Road Less Stupid. And the idea of the podcast was this guy was going to tell how by not forming a powerful habit, he lost $100 million. And he tells some really, really great stories in there. But so if you listen to podcasts, go check that out. But the story that I think I'm going to remember for a really long time was a story about Albert Einstein. Now, Albert Einstein was born in the late 1800s. I looked it up. I might botch this, like 1879, like in the 1800s, pretty long. And then he died in 1950 or 1955, something like that. I totally looked it up and was reading the Wikipedia page to like check some of my facts before this. My apologies if I got those dates wrong. But kind of, he lived a long time, a really good life, but he's part of this generation that we think of as grandma's generation, or maybe even the generation before grandma's generation. And he immigrated to the United States during the 1930s, like during the Great Depression. So a lot of what we talk about with grandma, like I think Albert would probably have believed because he was just part of that generation, and was living during the time of the Great Depression and stuff. But the story has nothing to do with it, but it's just kind of fun that I think of him in that way. But the story goes that one day a fellow professor in Princeton pulled him aside and said, Albert, there's everyone knows that every year with this class that you teach, you do the same questions on the final exam. And all the students know that, it's gotten back to me as another professor. Every year you ask the same questions. The students are going to stop studying. They're just going to answer those questions. And Albert Einstein looks at him and he says, but you don't realize the answers are always changing. And when I think, I'm not a physicist, I don't know that much about science, but that makes a lot of sense to me, especially in the 1940s. And the revolution of physics that Einstein led, right? And even the whole scientific community, he revolutionized things. The answers to the questions were always changing, right? He might say, ask, I have no idea what kind of questions would be on these finals, right? But if science was changing and always discovering new things and coming up with relativity when everything we thought was the same and, stuff like that, then absolutely the answers would change. And if society and culture and economics and, technology and all those things are changing even faster in the 21st century, shouldn't the answers to our questions change as well? And it does go back to the questions that we're asking. If we're asking truly powerful, transformative questions, then yes, the answers probably do change. And I was thinking about some of the questions that I love to ask of myself and of others, of people that might work with us at Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. Questions like, what do you want your money to do for you? Where is the best place to put your money right now? In 5 years from now, how will you know you've been successful along your financial journey? Questions like that you might ask today, But then in a year or two, the answer could be different. Or in a month or two, the question could be different. And during a crisis, the answer could be different. Um, and that actually is really exciting. But also, what's exciting about it is that um, what if there was a financial tool that, as the answers change, as your goals and dreams change, as life changes, right? The answers to your questions change, the tool could change with it. And that's actually one of the things I love most about grandma strategy. But I don't want to get into like a whole what is grandma strategy and all that today. I'm here to talk about this crisis and what could I ask for during this crisis? Meaning, what could you ask for during this crisis? And I think there's so many things that you could ask for. And I want to start with people who are really, really struggling right now. And maybe you got laid off, maybe you got a severe reduction in hours. Um, maybe you're down to one income instead of two. Something is not working the way that you thought it would be working right now. And guess what? You've got lots of things you could ask for. You could call your mortgage company and ask for a deferment so that you don't have to pay your mortgage right away. You could call your credit card companies and ask them to lower your minimum payment or freeze the interest on your account or delay your payment due date. You could call your electric company, ask for all those same things, your gas company, the cable and internet company. You could ask them to increase your internet speed if you need that. You could call your student loan company and say, can you defer my student loan payments? Which is actually might even happen without you asking. I heard somebody say today that, or like recently, that they are deferring payments and saying no interest. And then you can choose whether you want to pay or not for a certain amount of time. Great, call, ask about it. The trick is you have to call, you have to ask, you have to email, you have to get on their chat on their website, whatever you need to do, you have to go ask for what you need during this time, particularly if you need those kind of things. And if you need unemployment, need some extra food from a food pantry to help feed your family during this time, that's okay. Go ask for what you need. That's what those programs and that assistance is there for temporary relief when you're struggling. And there's actually, we were talking about this the other day. I was reminded of a really, really good book called When Helping Hurts that talks about how to alleviate poverty. And they have this really awesome framework for how to think about different poverty alleviating programs. And things like a food pantry, those are made for temporary relief due to something happening, right? Like a dramatic event, like a hurricane or an earthquake or a tornado or a loss of job or something like that. They're meant to be there, bring you back to where you were before, get on your feet. So use those for what they're there for. They're not meant for a long-term dependent. But there's so many like gurus out there that are saying, go get a job, don't apply for unemployment. That's the bad thing to do. Protect yourself, protect your family, use the programs that are there for you if that's what you truly need during this time. But there's also plenty of other things you can ask for too. Like we talked about, deferment, lower payments, no interest, all kinds of things like that. And if you're a business owner, guess what? You got a whole bunch more things you can ask for. Your landlord, you can ask them to defer your rent. You could ask your suppliers. Normally, I pay you cash on delivery. Can I pay you in 30 days or 60 days? They want to get paid, right? So they'd rather get paid in 30 or 60 days than not get paid at all. There's all kinds of things you can ask for that you need during this time, especially if you're in that kind of situation. Now, let's pretend instead you're just working from home. You're maybe still getting the same salary, or maybe just got a small reduction in hours, from 40 to 32 or something like that. So you're still able to make ends meet. There's probably things you could think of that could help you feel better supported right now. Like maybe you need more frequent meetings with your team from work, or maybe you need less frequent meetings. I've heard several people that I've been talking to complaining about it just feels like Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. So maybe you need to ask for, can we do fewer of these, or can we limit the time on these? Maybe you need to ask for people to stop emailing you all the time. I know my email inbox has been exploding with people trying to push this program or to get me to sign up for that webinar, and they're seeking help in this way or that way. And I'm just like, okay, I get it. Like, you can send one email, not 5. So you can like respond, ask them, hey, can you send me fewer emails? Ask for what you need during this time, even if it seems silly, right? That kind of feedback, particularly for someone that's trying to help and to, still make ends meet for themselves. If they're a business owner, your feedback is going to actually help them become a better business owner, a better helper. Just do it with like a spoonful of sugar, right? Don't just email like, hey, you're emailing me too often. Say, hey, I really appreciate that you're trying to do this, but but can I ask if you'd send me fewer requests, or, something like that. Same with if it's all the Zoom meetings, right? Or you need more Zoom meetings. Say, I really appreciate, that we're doing this and that we're trying to stay in touch and blah, blah, blah. May I ask if we could do this? And that's actually one of my favorite questions, is asking for permission. Can we talk about, can I ask a hard question? Would it be okay if? Are you open to a conversation about? That's actually some of my favorite questions to ask, because then they're saying yes to having you ask that harder, deeper, more meaningful question, rather than you just jump right there. So, that might be a question you could ask during this time. Would it be okay if? Can I ask you a hard question? I'd love to get deep. Would that be okay? Are you open to, what, blah, blah, blah. So, that's actually been really helpful for me, because I can be a little blunt and a little bit too much speak my mind, and asking permission to speak my mind or to be blunt has actually helped me win friends and influence people, so to speak. So what could I ask for during this time? Now, here's where I want you to turn to yourself. What could you ask for from yourself during this time? Now, maybe you're really stressed. You've been pushing really hard already. We just entered the second quarter of the year. We finished 3 months, Q1. We're entering into Q2. Maybe you pushed really hard in Q1. You set those New Year's resolutions, you set your goals for 2020, whatever it was, and you hit the ground running. Maybe you have to ask yourself, what do I need to do to step back and do some more self-care during this time? How can I make sure that I'm not going to end up being burnt out in a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple of months? Or maybe you're pushing really hard, this crisis started, and you're finding yourself saying lots of excuses. Well, it's COVID. I don't need to do that. Or, I was early, now that this crisis is on, I don't need to do that, especially because I don't have to commute to work. I'm just going to wake up later and sleep in. Or everybody else is watching Netflix. I might as well watch Netflix too. Maybe the question to ask yourself during the time is, what could I be doing with this time so that I am who I want to be when I come out of this crisis? Who do I want to be when this crisis is over? And what could I be doing now to help myself become that person? And this idea, there's actually a really good book, if you like reading books, called Mindset. What's the girl? Carol Duet. Thank you. Brandon's right here behind the screen. She wrote this book, Mindset, and she's got these two mindsets that she juxtaposes: the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And I found this really, really helpful for lots of things. She's got a great part about raising kids with a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I've even caught myself during this crisis tending toward a fixed mindset. We have this set period of time. I'm just going to get through it. That's all I can do during this time, is just get through it. If I can once we get to the other end of this, then I can X, Y, or Z. And I recognized that and I said, no, 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 no. There's plenty I could be doing. Hence daily lives, right? To help people manage money during this crisis. That's part of it, right? But like even personally, right? Getting up at the time that I want to get up, even though I could sleep in and start work a little later because no one's expecting me to be working right at, the time I used to be working. And everyone's okay with if, I take a little bit longer getting back to them about this or that, but that is kind of for me an excuse, right? Oh, to stop growing when this might actually be the best time for me to make sure I've got some of those routines in place. I'm continuing with business as normal so that this time feels a little more normal, right? And not so strange. That might be really powerful. So let me go back to that question. Who do you want to be on the other side of this crisis? And what does that mean for what you need to do today to become that person? And then another, I mentioned earlier, I was listening to this podcast from The One Thing, a book written by Gary Keller. And in the book, they talk about this thing they call the centering question. And the centering question goes like this. What is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? What is the one thing I can do today such that by doing it, everything becomes easier or unnecessary? I added the today here. It could be, what's the one thing I could do during this crisis such that everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? Or maybe it's, what's the one thing I could do with my money such that everything else becomes easier? Really, really powerful question to ask during this time. If you want more about that, totally recommend Gary Keller's book. It's on Audible if you want to listen to it. That's how I consumed it. And then they've got a great podcast and all kinds of things for the one thing. But just asking that focusing question can really show you a path forward, right? It can show you, like if you ask it on a big scale, like what's the one thing I could do in 5 years such that by doing it makes, the rest of my life easier or unnecessary, right? All the different things that I need to do for the rest of my life. Or you can ask it on a much smaller scale, like what's the one thing I need to do today such that by doing it, the rest of this crisis is easier or unnecessary, or like all the things that I might see happening become easier or just unnecessary, like all the bad things or become unnecessary. That could be a really, really powerful question. And if there's anything, well, so that's so, I don't even want to give examples because that's so personal and unique to you. The one thing you could do during this time such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. And that could be in your personal life. It could be with your work, whether that be a career or a business that you run, a self-employed kind of thing, or like a business with employees. It could be something like, what's the one thing you could do with your family such that by doing it, all the other things with your family become easier or unnecessary. That could be something really interesting. There's actually, I think, 7 different areas of life that you could ask that about. Your personal life, your work life, your career, your family, your spirituality, your physical health. I forget all of them, but you get the idea. Like there's so many different things you could ask that one question about. You just kind of vary it up a little bit to apply it to that situation. So to kind of recap today, especially I know people come in and out of these videos, what is the one thing is kind of the ultimate focusing question. But there's also all the questions you could ask of others. You can ask all those people you owe money to or that are sending your bills to defer or delay or give you some grace with those bills. There are people that are in your life still that you could ask to be part of your life, right? Even more, right? More Zoom calls or, that kind of thing. Or maybe there's people in your life that you need a little bit less of and you ask them to back off a little bit. Or it could be that there's things you want for yourself that you ask yourself for. And you kind of embrace that growth mindset of who do you want to be when this is done as we come out of this crisis? And what are you going to do to become that person? And those can be really, really powerful questions to ask. There was one more that I thought of as I was talking. Oh, maybe so I was talking about, like, you might need to ask people to be more a part of your life, or you might need to ask people to be less a part of your life. Maybe there's old friends that you've totally lost touch with, that maybe the ask is to reconnect with them, see how they're doing. That that I don't know if you've ever experienced this, that really warm feeling of starting like a conversation starts, but it feels like you've been having this conversation for years, even though there was a gap in the middle, right? I've got a good friend that every time we talk, I feel like that warm feeling happens, where I feel like we're just picking up that same conversation, we're pulling it forward, and that gives me a sense of home, right? So maybe that's what you need during this time. Ask for it. Get in touch with that old friend. See what happens, right? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, there's so many ways that we can grow and we can be healthy during this time. And some of that's going to be with our money, right? Making sure we're asking for what we need so that we can get through this time and not have our financial journey go over a cliff, but instead maybe just have a little road bump. Or maybe actually improve because of this crisis. That could totally be a thing. And if you've got an opportunity like that, go after it, ask for it, make it happen. But it can also bring the power of question to all the areas of our life too. And actually, some people might say money is the hardest place to ask questions. Thinking about money is really hard, and there's lots of emotions, guilt and anxiety and fear and sadness that come when people start asking questions about their money and what it's doing for them. And it doesn't have to be that way. Sorry, I got excited there for a second. It doesn't have to be that way, right? You can have a conversation about money with someone that's there to support you, non-judgmentally, help you process through the emotions, and get to a place that you feel like, okay, I can forget about everything that's in the past. I can think about where I'm at now and where I want to go. And I've got a clear journey that I could go on to get there. And that conversation helped me see that. That's exactly what Brandon and I do with people all the time. We ask questions, we have a conversation, and we help people forget about the past. We actually only have one question we ever ask people about the past, typically. And most of our conversations about today and the future, so that you can map out from where you are today, your point A, and your point B, and how you're going to get from point A to point B. Have a map, have a strategy, a way that you can take that journey. That often brings a lot of hope for people. I actually heard story after story of people who had given up on dreams and decided, because of the conversations we had with them, they've decided they can dream again. And people that are also still on that journey, right? They're still deciding they can dream again. There's actually one person I'm thinking of in particular that during the Great Recession, she just decided, I'm not dreaming anymore. She lost everything. And she's like, no point in having dreams. I lost everything. None of that's going to happen anymore. Or like, I already accomplished a lot of that because I'd built successful businesses and done successful things up to that time. So I'm just never going to set any goals or dreams. And I'm really hoping that as we continue the conversation, that she can start to dream again. She can start to set some goals. And even during that, those initial conversations, um, I saw glimmers of some hopes and dreams, like traveling with family or, doing this or that come up. And I want more of that for more people. Please, please, please do not lose hope of your goals and dreams during this time. Maybe the question to ask is, how can I keep my hopes and dreams for my financial future alive during this time? What could I do today so that all these hopes and dreams that I have are easier or maybe unnecessary in the future because I've actually gone beyond them? Maybe that's how we rephrase the one thing question. What's the one thing I could do today or during this crisis so that my hopes and dreams are easier, my financial hopes and dreams are easier or unnecessary? And that's what I'll leave you with today. I'd love to hear your answer to that question. Um, all you got to do is go to grandmaswealthwisdom.com, click on request a meeting, schedule an exploratory call, and we'll chat. We'll have that kind of conversation. I'll keep asking questions, non-judgmentally, but to help you bring the best out of yourself, and get really clear on where you want to go, and then help you put together the math and the spreadsheets and the steps forward to get to where you want to go. I love doing that. And we would love to do that for you, either Brandon or me. Okay, 8:31. I've gone a minute longer than planned. Join us tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm actually really excited about what we're going to talk about. Tomorrow's April 6th. We're going to talk about you choose what you do with your money. I need to rephrase that into a question. Maybe the question will be, what are you choosing to do with your money? Or what will you choose to do with your money? Or what choices are best for your money? We'll see how it ends up being tomorrow. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you then. Peace.